Okay, welcome everyone to our webinar, COVID Conversations in Higher Ed. Today we have with us Dr. Teresa Thompson Pinckney from Fayetteville State University. I'm so excited to have her joining us. And we're gonna start off with a little bit of interview back and forth between the two of us. And then we're gonna open it up to the audience to ask questions. So if you have a question throughout our discussion, please do put that in the chat and we will make sure that Dr. Pinckney is able to take your questions at the end. But first, welcome Dr. Pinckney. Thank you. So excited to have you with us. So let's start off with some background context. Can you tell us, what did Fayetteville State look like when COVID first hit? What did your role look like? And then what kind of happened after that in the spring?
Okay, so again, thanks for having me, and I'm looking forward to answering any questions and providing as much insight on behalf of Fayetteville State University. A little bit about, I'm going to start with just a little bit about our institution and where we were, and a little bit about our demographics so that people kind of know where we're working from and where we were working from at that point. So we have, at Fayetteville State University, we have about 6,500 students at that particular time. About 14% of our population are graduate students. So our undergraduate population was about 5,644. We are an HBCU. And basically what that means is that we're a historically Black college and university. And so ultimately our what is innate about us is making sure that we're providing access to our students. And we've been an institution for access and equity for a long time. So our population comprises, even though we are an HBCU, we are a very diverse institution. So over 50% of our a little bit above 50% of our students are your traditional students who would come to an HBCU. However, we're very diverse in that 46% of our students were transfer students, about 40% of our students were adult learners, and then as well we are in Fayetteville, North Carolina, which is right next to the second largest military installation. So 26% of our population are military. And so understanding that we have a very diverse population, when we actually found out about what was happening with regards to COVID, when we kind of got an idea that, this is something bigger than what we've ever experienced, we were for me, as serving as the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Access and Student Success, it was always about how can we make sure that we don't lose our students, and how can we be as create as little disruption as possible. But of course, going into that, from a leadership perspective, no one really, among other people on campus, no one really knew what we were getting ourselves into or what was about to happen. Our students were actually on spring break, and basically, prior to COVID, 47% of our classes were online. So we did have, quite a few classes, and our faculty were very much engaged with students. We have 10 online programs that are 100% online degree programs. So definitely that 47% was something that we were able to do in an effective way. And then of course, our students were on spring break, which was fortunate for us. And so when we found out we were gonna be closing our institution down and going 100% online, we went from 47% to 100% within 2 weeks. And we really we were already in the midst of spring break when the decision was made. So we extended it by a week, and basically from there, we were 100%. And even today, we're still 74%. So we're not 100% still. We've been able to bring students back to campus, but that 100% was a heavy lift. It was really a heavy lift. Fortunately, we had a lot of work that we were doing around digital learning. And so because we had many faculty who were already engaged in digital learning, be it blended learning, flipped learning, personalized learning, and all those different ways in which we wanted to better engage our students in a virtual environment, and support them with their learning. What we found is that, that helped us to be able to do that in a week, because our faculty who were not aware, had not been involved, or not involved, but who were not teaching online, basically supporting them and making sure they had what they needed to be successful with teaching their course to the best of our ability is what we did. One final thing that we did is that one of the things that we did initially is we did an assessment of our students, and basically we sent out a survey trying to get a survey of exactly what's going on with our students. And of course, just like many other institutions, we found that, you know, our students were having issues with access to computers or just the technology, Wi-Fi, hotspots and Wi-Fi. You had multiple generations and families. Not only was higher ed, our institution, the students were not coming back to campus, but also you had multi-generational where those who were in K-12 within families and people having to utilize, share equipment and things of that sort. So that assessment really gave us a great idea of where our students were and gave us a plan as far as what we needed to do to better support our students.
Absolutely. That's really helpful. So as your faculty and staff were making that transition right after spring break, what did the lift look like for you guys?
It was, you go from, interacting with people every day and taking that for granted, and to a point to where, staff are no longer able to come to campus. Nobody really knows what's going on. So the lift was really about how do we continue to support our students with the best that we can give them and understand what it is that they need, in a way that's going to enable us to be able to continue to serve. Our institution is a service institution. So even for those students, we actually did computer loans. We mailed them to our students. We did Wi-Fi spots and hotspots and mailed those to students. But sometimes it's like, when is it going to be enough? Because it's not stopping. It's bleeding, and we're trying to triage this and figure out when is it going to stop? And thinking it's going to stop within the next 3 to 4 weeks, in a month, and then it just continues. So we did, for our students who did not have a place to stay, they were able to come back to campus. So we did continue housing for a limited number of students for the rest of the semester, because we found that we needed to do that. And then of course, you had students who were in rural areas, and Wi-Fi, and hotspots don't work if don't have in that area. So, there were always challenges, but I feel like because we have a history of not having enough resources all the time to do all the great things that we do, we were able to do, I think we did well overall with regards to being able to triage and support our students.
For sure, for sure. So I want to get some context on Upswing as well. For those of you who aren't familiar with Upswing, Upswing is a student success and engagement platform. We have a wide range of modules supporting institutions bringing their departments online, as well as a virtual assistant that helps to communicate with students in a two-way manner via text message. And this is one of the tools I know that Fayetteville State has. So can you tell us a little bit about how you were using Upswing at that time when COVID first hit, and where the main focus is for you guys on our platform?
So as far as prior to COVID-19, we had just purchased Upswing to replace our online tutoring software that we had previously. So literally, our hero Joey, which we're very thankful for. A lot of we had Upswing individual team members from Upswing that came to visit the campus, like in February. So basically, we were in the midst of making our students aware of the platform. There was a little bit of usage, not a lot, but also making our faculty aware of the resources and our staff aware of the resources. So really, at that point, we were getting everything up and running. We got more than what we anticipated, because Upswing offers a lot of it's a platform that supports us in a lot of ways when it comes to student success. But at that point, we pretty much were just getting the word out about and ready to launch, when we got back from spring break.
Absolutely. So when you're moving past spring break, figuring out what this looks like for the rest of the summer, even at the end of the spring, what were the biggest challenges that you were dealing with?
So there were multiple challenges, and I'll only talk about a few. One was, our students were experiencing something that was not their fault. So one of the things that we had to do was take a look at our academic policy. So there were some academic policies that were changed as a result of what was happening to students, such as, allowing students to withdraw without it affecting their number of allowable withdrawals for the university. Revising the academic standing policy, for the rest of the semester, allowing students to opt to take a certain grade that was more COVID related, and so that their GPA would not be impacted. So that's one of the major aspects of what we were dealing with, and trying to make sure that we decreased the decrease the amount of pressure that our students were experiencing as much as possible with our academic policies. Of course, with regards to processes, from an institutional perspective, a lot of our systems are paperwork. So, making sure that we were able to keep paperwork processing, and whatever it was that we needed to do to continue to support students, we were not letting the paperwork get in the way. So, of course, we've come a long ways since then with regards to electronic signatures. We got it down to the spot now, but at the end of the day, it was a very challenging time to continue to provide services to students and make sure that those things that needed to be purchased were able to move forward. But I will say our purchasing system was online. But all the other contracts and all these other things that we deal with in a bureaucracy, those are things that had to be dealt with. And then, of course, with regards to finances for our students. So not only were we looking at finances as an institution, with regards to how is all of this going to impact our retention, graduation rates. We have incoming freshmen. What is that going to look like? Are our students still going to come? Are parents going to let them come? What are all these dynamics that's impacting that? So definitely financially, we foresaw that as a challenge. But one of the things that did happen was we received quite a bit of funding from the CARES Act. And of course, our students were experiencing hardship. So for our low income students, we were able to utilize those fundings to support them. But also, for internet services, they were unable to work, and all those things that were happening with our students, especially our low income students, but also the university, realizing that we're going to have to purchase personal protective equipment for our students and ourselves, sanitation stations and things of that sort. So financially, of course, we were concerned, and we felt that there were going to be a lot of challenges around that. So finances, processes, academic policies were some of the bigger areas that we found to be of challenge at that point in time.
For sure. And just because I'm sure are a lot of people experiencing the same challenges on the financial side, I'd love for you to share a little bit about the process for getting the CARES Act money and figuring out how you were going to apply that for your students most effectively.
So I'm not in tune with all of the decision making that was happening during that time, because really my job was focusing on how can we make sure that we're providing access and ensuring student success continues. But from what but I do oversee quite a few federal grants. So I understand the process of federal, getting funding from the federal government. But basically, there was basic criteria that was required of us for our students who were actually low income students. That was who that money was for. Mm-hmm. And basically it was to support them during their hardship. So, students there was a request that had to be made. Of course, there was a formalizing of the process first, and then actually getting the money to the people who needed it. So there was assessments going out, there was information going out, trying to make students aware of the opportunities, but also from our side, knowing some of the situations of students and going through their financial aid packaging and things of that sort, we were able to identify students who we knew would need support based on, how much their need was and things of that sort, or how much their balances were, and then of course, the university also, there was a process where different universities received additional monies. And so therefore making decisions how we were going to spend that money on infrastructure and capacity and PPEs and purchasing all those things to make sure that when students came back to campus, they were safe. So I don't know all of the processes. I just know that, there was a certain amount of time to spend the money. And so we were working through those deadlines and making sure that we met the deadlines either by the federal government or even, by the UNC system, because we are a state agency, or even our chancellor. So.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks. So now let's talk about planning for the fall. Um, First, before we even get to what the plan became, what did the process look like for that? What were the most important considerations as you were building out your fall plan?
So of course, the fall plan really, the safety of our students and our faculty and staff were important. And so a lot of feedback occurred through town hall meetings where we were speaking to parents about what was going on and talking to them about the process for incoming freshmen and things of that sort. Town hall meetings for our current students, making them aware of changes in the academic calendar, and as well as staff. Our chancellor was having town hall meetings with all of these different bodies, as well as alumni, because alumni give, and so helping alumni to understand what the challenges were and that we needed them to support our students as well. So the plan was really revolved around communication, being transparent with communication. There was a rearranging of schedules to make sure that that our students and staff and faculty were safe once we returned to campus, and then also just the whole aspect of student engagement and planning to make sure that we could give our students the best experience we could with the limitations that had been provided to us with regards to that. So, and then one other thing, not only did we have virtual town hall meetings, we also had various what do you call them? Task force. So we had a COVID-19 task force. We had an enrollment management task force. We had an academic affairs task force that was getting feedback from faculty. So, there were task force that were working to do the everyday work to make sure that we were not missing anything and trying to make sure that we decrease the gaps and decrease the number of silos that exist, within higher ed.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm sure so many people can relate to the siloed effect. And then when you try and get out of your silo, it's like, what's happened in all these other departments?
Definitely.
So as these departments are working across teams and across the task force, what does the iterations look like? Did you come up with a plan at the beginning of the summer and then as more data came out, say, oh, we need to pivot and change this? Did you have a plan A, plan B, plan C? Or was it just
What
kind
I
of a
would say
rolling
is,
iteration?
oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So there were multiple layers of planning. So you have the strategic planning as far as, what are we going to do? This is what the plan is. But if you think back during that time, there were so many things that we were learning along the way, and we consistently had to adjust. There was no, this is the plan and we're going to stick with this plan. We came up with a plan, and as we were coming up with the plan, something else changed, because we had to make decisions about when we were going to start back up in the fall. Were we going to, there was options about how we were going to actually provide our courses to our students. And so all of that decision making was happening. At the same time, we're thinking we're going to be back on campus sooner. We expected our staff to return to campus late June, early July. We didn't return until the end of July. So it was a consistent change as far as what we were doing. We actually decided to bring students back earlier. So we started school 2 weeks, we started our classes 2 weeks earlier than what we were originally planning. So all of that had an impact on our decision making as we went through. Sometimes it seemed like things were changing every week. Whatever this plan was, we had to adjust fire. My husband's military. We had to adjust fire because it was like, oh my gosh. So there were so many unanticipated consequences of what was happening with the pandemic.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. So now I know FSU has been really successful once you guys have got back on campus. Can we talk through some of your success stories once you've brought students back? What was the adaptations that you made? You mentioned some timing shifts with the schedules. How did you make that student experience and student engagement work for this fall?
So again, part of it was at the first and foremost, it was safety. So part of the decision that we had to make was, were we going to delay the start of the semester? Were we going to go 100%? Were we going to continue to be 100% remote learning, or were we going to go hybrid, where we would have, part of the, where we would have online and face-to-face learning? So what we decided was that we were going to, again, it was about the experience of the student. So, and we have had quite a bit of success in this area. We did go with a hybrid plan. We started our classes about 2 weeks earlier in hopes of understanding that the pandemic and the influenza season is pretty much December and January. So our classes end right at Thanksgiving. And then the students come at the end of January. They come back at the end of January. So trying to just keep
away from that,
the disruption as much as we can possibly think to do. So we did have the foresight to do that. So the hybrid experience for our students, basically, I would say that to me, the biggest beast was actually tackling the schedules, understanding that some students had already registered for classes. We did away with Friday classes. So those Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes had to be translated to Monday, Wednesday, and notifying students of those changes, making sure that we were incorporating social distancing. So the way that it's set up is half the class comes, say if it's a Monday, Wednesday class, half the class comes on Monday, half the class comes on Wednesday, and then there is a virtual teaching of the course at the same time for those students who are not on campus, or the students that are not in the face-to-face interaction. So therefore, we're decreasing the number of students in the class. We're also decreasing the number of students in the buildings, and then also making sure we also have a 30-minute break between each of the classes to make sure that there's time to clean the classes. And then, of course, Friday, the reason for Friday was to make sure that there was a deep clean that happened over the weekend. So that experience, most students have adjusted. Of course, there's always going to be some challenges with that. But, overall, we feel that in our attempt to make sure that we kept some level of normalcy, which when we use the word normal today, who would have ever thought there would always be some kind of quote around normal. But, as far as the safety and protection of our students, I think that, if you look at our numbers as far as COVID cases and things of that sort, which is public information, we have, we feel like what we've done has enabled us to decrease those numbers and keep it as low as possible within that we can humanly do.
For sure. In regard to the staff successes, so the student experience you were able to modify, what were the things that you had your staff do in your departments, for the faculty, any of that, to make them safer and to help their processes dealing with this kind of hybrid, extra effort on both the online and in person?
So of course, there's the human factor where, in addition to what's going on with our students, there's also what's going on with staff and faculty and the impact that COVID is having on us and each other, during COVID. So, definitely there was a lot of HR and a lot of accommodations that have been made for staff, as well as faculty with regards to whatever's going on with them personally, and the impact that COVID is having, such as having children who are in public school, and public school is still online, it's still online. So we have flexed our schedules. I work, for example, I work 3 days a week on campus, as well as 2 days off campus, just to make sure that we're still a lot of our academic support offices are open. Some of our offices are by appointment only. However, the units that I oversee, all of them, the offices are open, of course, half staffed. And on a hybrid schedule as well. As far as faculty, of course, those accommodations were made for faculty as well. In addition to giving them the support that they needed to with technology, laptops and things of that sort. Not only was that something that was accommodated with students, but also staff and faculty. So overall, I feel like we're adjusting to the best of our ability, but I feel like we have really been intentional around how we social distance, but we also continue to provide a space for our students to be able to learn in a face-to-face environment. And then, of course, I don't want to, leave out student affairs. I work on academic affairs side of things, but, our student affairs offices, they work directly with students through, student government, the Greek life, and all those experiences that our students come to our institution to get. But they've actually, they continued with, our orientations. They continued with our welcome week. While it was virtual, they created a hybrid experience where students could opt to come on campus and experience it, but as well as making sure that there were no more than 10 people in a classroom, so just the logistics around all of that, I'm like, I give them a thumbs up with regards to what they have been able to do with students hybrid wise, virtual wise, and continuing programs with small groups of students on campuses with less than 10 inside and no more than 20 when they have an event outside. So that has been, that was another undertaking and changing the way in which we do what we do, but also making sure that we are amenable to what students need at this point. Yeah. So also, I would be remiss if I did not talk about our the Center of Personal Development. That's where we have our students that have access to have conversations about their health, their mental state, their challenges, their social issues and things of that sort. So we have definitely we've definitely been in tune with understanding that these challenging times, there's a lot of challenges for our students from a social and an emotional perspective as well.
Yeah, for sure. So now, last little follow on to that. Did anything remain the same from the pre-COVID times to this new plan in the fall? And if anything did, why? Why was that this decision?
I would say that what stayed the same is our commitment to our students. What stayed the same is, continuing to create an experience with all of the constraints to be able to create an experience of face-to-face. So while it doesn't look the same, there is some aspect of the attempt and ability to continue to do face-to-face experiences through our academics, as well as our support for our students, as well as those offices that can continue to be open for our students. And so let me think, is there anything?
I know, right, Becky?
I don't know much of anything that stayed the same. I feel like we're all operating from a totally different lens. Mm-hmm. And so the way in which we function and the way in which we do our work has totally changed, and so off the top of my head, I can't think of anything that stayed the same. It appears that there was but what I would say is, we still have staff intact, we still have faculty intact, we still have the love, and we still have the care for our students intact. And as long as we are consistently trying to find out what the needs of our students are, that is what is going to help us continue to keep our students, retain our students, but also serve our students. And, believe it or not, our enrollment is actually up,
Wow.
Yeah, we had a record up. So, I feel like a lot changed, but we had some infrastructures in place that allowed us to continue to function and adapt without, as seamless as we could, so that we can keep the doors open for our students.
Absolutely. So speaking of infrastructure, I want to talk a little bit about the tools, and let's start with Upswing. How has FSU grown into using Upswing? I know you mentioned you guys were really onboarding and promoting it to your students. How are you using it now this fall?
So what we have been able to do and where we have benefited from Upswing, one is it's allowed us to reach our students. So Anna, which is our virtual assistant, like Siri, I guess like Siri. I'm an Apple person, so Siri is who I use. But Anna, basically, with her, we actually had someone to work with us on, identifying those important, the important information that we needed to relate to our students, as well as those milestone registration and all those things that students have to do, and reminding them of that, but also infusing communication to our students about, healthy and, mental awareness and, some financial literacy and things of that sort, some of those soft skills that we want to continue to remind our students. So we did not have a texting system. So again, we benefited a lot more from Upswing than what we could have ever imagined with Anna, and utilizing the team to help us come up with the messaging that's in alignment with best practices for our students today, and then engaging them back and forth. And then also providing, Upswing provides the analytics. So we're able to go in and actually see the analytics of what our students are responding to, and how they're engaging with Anna. And then also understanding that there are questions that students have, and building up Anna to know everything that's going on campus, but also understanding that there are questions that students have and they don't know who to ask, and they're asking Anna. And so as a result of that, we're able to triage those issues in-house so that Anna can respond whenever those situations come up that she can't respond to. The other critical element, of course, is academic support. So we have, all of our tutoring is online. So not only do we have the tutors that are available through Upswing, but we also have our own tutors who our students were used to seeing face-to-face. We're able to continue to provide face-to-face tutoring for our students. We're running supplemental instruction through Anna. We also have small group tutoring up to 5 students, as well as one-on-one. We're able to do workshops not only on in regards to reading, math, science. We also have small sessions on time management, test taking skills, some of those social, emotional skills that students need to help them be successful as a student. And so we're able to utilize Anna, that platform, to do that. Also, one of the initiatives that I actually oversee is a coaching project. So we wanted to reach out to students early on to let them know that we care. So we actually built up a system where we had our admin support, as well as other staff members who were dislocated because of what was happening. And they actually were reaching out to students and reminding them of homework assignments. This was right after COVID. So during the months of March and April, and we've expanded that since then. So, and we are utilizing Upswing to help us with that. So initially it was, staff members reaching out to students and, reminding them about assignments and things of that sort, and referring them to resources that they may have needed as a result of what was going on with COVID. But what we were able to do is we actually expanded to a peer coaching project where we now have peer students who are actually coaches, who are actually providing coaching to students. They're also reminding them and nudging them with what they need to know. And we're using Upswing to actually have those one-on-one sessions and small group sessions with a coach. So we do have that coaching platform that was made available to us through Upswing. And then, of course, our freshman class is pretty much engaged in Upswing. The freshman seminar courses, as well as the instructors, they actually definitely engage students through the coaching and advising through the Upswing platform. So we've definitely gotten a lot more than what we were anticipating using as a result. And so I would just say Upswing was right on time. It was a blessing in disguise. We did not know what blessing it would bring to us. And then the analytics, the ability to see who's using, who's not using, and being able to adjust and make decisions based on that data has been helpful as well.
For sure. Thanks for that context. So as you're talking process, are there any other tools that y'all were using to kind of pivot the experience on the staff side potentially in the fall?
Can you elaborate on what you mean by that?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I mean, so we talked about like your fall plan in bringing everyone back with different timing stuff, and the challenges in figuring out, okay, how can my staff be in, halftime or change up the scheduling of the courses? Were there any new tools or tools that you had that you were using differently to figure that sort of stuff out?
There's always going to be technology that we use. So, for example, Adobe Sign, the signatures and things of that sort. Um, I don't know. I'm not really sure how to answer the question.
Sorry, I just was curious if
Okay.
there's any other tools that y'all were relying heavily on to make these changes.
I mean, I'll definitely say we've increased the usage of dashboards, taking the data that we already had and actually, especially administratively looking at, what's going on with our students, are our freshmen still registering for classes, so just basically using dashboards so that we can kind of take all that information and understand what's going on with a visual so that we could be able to make decisions more quickly, data-driven decision making. And we know that we need to do more of that. And then of course, the Upswing dashboard gives us another analytic as well. So I think most of what we adjusted in utilizing of technology was really continuing to use Canvas. I think we, even as a staff person, I'm using Canvas more than what I've ever used it because I'm using it for onboarding of my, since I can't have face-to-face trainings for my virtual peer coaches, I'm using Canvas to do that. So, definitely the technology that we were using, we're definitely utilizing that more so that we can be able to support the students.
That definitely makes sense. So now talking on the student engagement front, what are some of the best practices or tips that you have for keeping students engaged when you do have to do it, in the video chat or other virtual methods?
So I think part of it is, really understanding what I used to say, understanding Gen Z and, really understanding how they interface with technology and, basically understanding what the best practices are to engage with Gen Z so that you can be able to reach them. As well as with marketing. So of course, texting and things of that sort and less emails. And that was something we were already working on, but we were forced to, decrease the number. I think the number of emails may have increased, but we have other platforms we're able to communicate with students in as well. So, that would definitely be the actual getting students to be engaged, but also diversifying how you engage them. So like I said, Student Affairs has done an excellent job of being conscious of, making sure that not only do they have hybrid where there's virtual as well as the face-to-face experience, but also, making sure the grouping, individual small grouping, utilizing students to interface with students is also important, which is part of the reason why peer coaching was the model that I went with, because I wanted to ensure that we have students out there in the student's face and presenting and providing information. Definitely, our Greek life, SGA, the residence hall, a lot of those are heavily, those are heavy student infrastructures on campus that we're utilizing, and they're really making it a lot easier for us because they understand the engaging of students. But I would also say, it's not really only about Gen Z for us as an institution. It's also about our adult learners. So, finding ways to engage with the adult learner through the texting, as well as keeping them informed about what's going on. Part of it, there's always been this balance of over communicating. I feel like, what we've learned is that over communicating is important because when people say they don't know, then that's where the problem is. So, finding multiple ways to communicate, but also over communicating in various ways are helpful, especially, social media, utilizing that platform as well. So.
For sure, thanks. So last question from me here, and then we're going to go to our audience questions. So our audience, if you guys have any questions, I see there's some popped up in the chat already, but please do put your questions in the chat because we'll get to them in just a couple minutes. I wanted to know about on the metrics side, how are you measuring success this fall when it looks so different than in previous years? And we still have some time to go, obviously, until the end of the fall, but what are you looking at to track that right now?
So we're looking at enrollment as far as, our students, enrollment, but also our students going to class. That's a metric, the no-shows and the the students who are not going to class over a certain amount of time. Also, we're looking at, utilization of our various platforms that we have for students and utilizing those analytics within those systems to help us understand what is going on. So, of course, with Upswing, it's going to be usage of responding to Anna or asking questions of Anna, as well as, all of our different support services, our students using those services. So it's really about attendance, as well as, surveys from students about their needs, as well as at the end of sessions, asking students what they think about, getting that feedback, that qualitative feedback is important. So after any events and any activities and services, getting students to give feedback so that we can understand what we might need to do better. So it's really, of course, looking at, account balances, where are students with paying off their account balance, because that may show, that students are struggling and they're not able to pay off their account, drop add. So basically those basic measures that we've always used, continuing to use those measures, but also, adding in more qualitative feedback and using those analytic software that, because we have a lot of software, but we historically have not utilized it at the level that we could have. And we have been forced to change and make sure that we're using it and making decisions based on that information as we're getting it.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Appreciate your time so much, Dr. Pinckney. This is, for all of our attendees, the end of our formal interview, but we are taking your questions now for the last 12 minutes or so. So please do put those in the chat. We have 3 or 4 questions already, so we'll try and get to as many as possible. So the first one looks like it's regarding classes and class sizes for next semester. What does it look like for you guys as far as registration and figuring out the balance of class sizes looking spring 2021 at this point? Because registration is coming up soon.
So it's my understanding that we're continuing with the same model. So basically, pre-registration, we're getting ready to start pre-registration. So definitely that'll give us a gauge of what's going on with students. And then we'll move into registration, of course, in October. Basically, we're continuing with our plan that we currently have in place. We're not adjusting, we're not going to adjust, the model that we're using. We're still going to continue with the hybrid model.
Okay, thanks. And then it looks like a follow-on to that. For the faculty teaching loads, are you end up increasing those loads because of the differing class sizes, or have those remained consistent from pre-COVID times?
It's my understanding that it has remained consistent.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I just looked at some data and, the course load is still the same as it was prior to COVID.
Okay, awesome. So the next question is in regard to student athletes. Can you talk about the impact that the changes have had on that population?
Well, we know that we're not having our athletic events this year, this semester, and so of course, that has had an impact not only on the athletes, but just the whole infrastructure of how we function as a university and as a HBCU. And so I'm not in tune with how it has specifically impacted the athletes, but I would say it's pretty consistent, it would be consistent with the students that I come in contact with every day. Our athletes are on campus. So they are here, but of course, not being able to play sports is it's going to have an impact on them, of course. So I would say that it's probably substantially impacting their interest in college, as well as what they're used to doing every day. But I think everybody's impacted by that. So so
that's very true, for sure. So you've got some kudos and shout outs for people addressing all of these different aspects of the challenges that have been brought up. Someone wants to know, in light of the long-term implications, what what practices are you going to be carrying forward, just in terms of best practices, not the specific plan for spring, but just into your everyday life and work? What best practices are you carrying forward from all of this pandemic?
So definitely, that's a good question. I would surmise that we would definitely continue. We have been, we escalated how we looked at digital learning on our campus. We were doing this pilot, and we were doing this, and we were getting prepared, and we were learning how to be more efficient with regards to our virtual learning environment. But definitely, I would say that 100% of our faculty are now have this experience of virtual learning and teaching, and the pedagogy around that definitely that's something I would foresee that we would continue to have some aspects of hybrid learning for students. Maybe not at this percentage, but definitely it has opened the doors for us to be able to continue this as a best practice. I would also say, because we have a large population of adult learners, as well as adult learners and transfer students, we've grappled with how to better support. And so I do feel like this does allow us to look at other creative ways to reach our adult learners. And so I feel like we've been missing some. So this is definitely, COVID has required us to think differently and do differently. And so I feel like moving forward, this has enabled us to look a little bit more broader at how our population has changed over the years, and how we continue to serve those who are coming to our institution. Let me see. And then third, just student engagement. Again, I feel like this is really helping us as staff members to become more in tune with moving away from emails and utilizing more social media, or even within our departments, just finding more ways to communicate with students differently. It's really forced us to do that. So those are three, best practices that I foresee us continuing with, to be able to increase continue our student success and increase it as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so the next question that we have in here, and thank you everyone for asking a bunch. I see there's still more, but we're going to try and work through them, is regarding your identity as an HBCU. We have a vibrant HBCU community within Upswing, and I know there's probably other attendees at this discussion right now who are HBCUs. And can you talk about how you balance nurturing your identity as an HBCU and the things that make HBCUs unique and special, while trying to balance the online enrollment portion and the kind of national push towards everything being virtual?
Well, what I will say is, first and foremost, we will always be an HBCU. That's something that cannot be taken away from us. We have a culture of nurturing. And of course, because, when we talk about that diversity, we've been experiencing the changing demographic of our institution. But what I would say is as an institution, we are committed to the work and the nurturing of our students, and keeping those tenets of what has helped us to be successful as an institution. It is demonstrated in our, we just launched our new strategic plan within our strategic plan, and about HBCU and who we are in our identity. And it speaks to some aspects of those areas that are important for us with regards to priorities as an HBCU. So I feel like, when your strategic plan speaks to that, then there's definitely an opportunity to continue that legacy with a whole lot of level of intentionality.
For sure. Thank you. Okay, looks like this will probably be our last question, unless someone sneaks one more in really quickly. But so someone is curious, with all of the changes, we have the possibility for up to maybe a year and a half of change and just potentially setback for some students in secondary education. Is there something that you guys are doing for the class of 2021 to test and make sure that they're still having the same educational quality, and just moving forward, being aware of those challenges for the students who were really impacted by this in the first kind of year of this pandemic?
So what I would say is, so we have an executive enrollment management committee, and of course our admissions office, as well as our support offices, student service offices are involved in that, on that team. And so while I don't know all of the specifics around what exactly the plans are, I can assure you that our admissions director, Ulisa Bowles, is already on that from a perspective of admitting students. And so, because she has been talking about what they're experiencing and the change that's happening, you know, as they're recruiting and doing the work they do. So I don't have an answer for exactly how we're going to deal with that, because what we've been focused on as of right now has been creating experience for our current students and with where they are now. But also, and now we get to move toward, you know, okay, now that we got the students on campus, now that we feel like, we're looking at the COVID cases and, they're not increasing and doubling every day,
Right.
so we've been working with just trying to figure out how we were going to deal with the students coming back to campus. Now we've kind of gotten to a point to where we can go, whoo, but we can't woosah very long, because now is the time where we're starting to look at, next semester as well as moving into the next year. But what I would say is I'm sure that we'll be utilizing admissions as well as our experiences from the freshmen, what's happening with our freshmen now, in addition to what is happening in student affairs. All of those things combined, I feel, will help us be able to better, as well as research and what is being said in the research is going to help guide us with reigniting and looking at fundamentally how teaching and learning occurs and how we can work to make sure that we're supporting our students at the best that they can get based on their needs moving forward.
Absolutely, that totally makes sense. Okay, so it looks like we're about coming to the end of our time. So I want to thank you again, Dr. Pinckney, for taking the time out to talk with us and answer so many questions from our audience. And thank you as well to everyone who's been sitting in and joining us live. We appreciate you participating, and we'll be sure to send out the recording as well so you can share that with your colleagues, or if you had to stop out for a moment, you can find the part that you missed. Thank you again, and now we'll be signing off. Take care, everyone.
Yeah. Bye-bye.